dismissed these cases. It is clear that our state's being targeted, but they've tried to get this data in 24 states. Now they'll say, we'll bring out the ICE agents. If only you just give us that data. Mr. President, there are 3,000 federal officers in Minnesota, and I can not state it more unequivocally. ICE must leave Minnesota. Law enforcement has made this clear. They can't do their jobs. They can't do their jobs. They can't investigate burglaries. They can't help on some complex cases because they're being called to people's homes all the time because of the ICE agents hanging around homes of just regular citizens, in parking lots, chasing people down. Local businesses, business leaders have come out and said, enough. Police chiefs in our state have joined together. Police chiefs across the nation have joined together and said, we believe in proper police procedures and the rule of law. But the biggest story out of this is the everyday people, the ordinary people doing extraordinary things. They've rallied together, brought food to their neighbors, drove other kids to school, showed up for small businesses, and marching 50,000 strong. I was there. I saw it. 50,000 peaceful marchers in -10 below weather. You know, 250 years ago, our nation declared independence from a king. Our nation was born from a deep revulsion to the idea of an illegal occupation, a standing army of British troops literally taking over our streets, demanding to see papers, acting with cruelty, resorting to violence. In those times, newspapers shared what was happening. Well, today, Americans are seeing it firsthand on video. Americans heard Renee Good's final words to the officer who shot her, "I'm not mad at you." They saw Alex spend his final moments trying to help a woman who'd been shoved to the ground. His last words, "Are you okay?" And just as Americans fought for liberty 250 years ago, they're standing up for liberty now. People across the country are speaking out against this cruelty. And, of course, it is good that Bovino was removed. Other people have to be removed too. Kristi Noem shouldn't be in her job anymore. But mostly, we need these ICE agents out of Minnesota. And we hope that happens soon. Border Patrol, they've began that removal, but the ICE agents have to get out of Minnesota. It is a very dangerous situation. I spoke with Alex's parents the next day after we lost him. Through the tears, they talked about what he was like and how they wanted the world to know the truth and how much it hurt him to have senior administrative officials call him a domestic terrorist, call him a would-be assassin. Alex's sister said Alex always wanted to make a difference in this world, and it's devastating that he won't be here to witness the impact that he was making. We must stand up. And so we are asking our colleagues, they know the White House, we've all done our best here, but to tell them it's time for those ICE agents to come home. There must be new leadership in the Department of Homeland Security now. And there must be major reforms to these agencies before this Congress should approve another cent. First, we need to stop these roving bans. This means coordination with state and local law enforcement and no more bounties that encourage immigration officials to detain individuals, even without cause. We need proper training and a code of conduct that includes transparent investigations and meaningful accountability for when agents break the law or violate the Constitution. This also means use of force policies that are the same for local police. Immigration agents, like all law enforcement, should comply with the Fourth Amendment. This bounty system, we've had stories and we have hundreds of cases in our offices right now where people were stopped, a white guy, Latino. They said, "Latino, where are you from?" Latino says, "I was born in America." They put him in the car, drive him a few blocks, let him out, or take him to the detention center and then let him go. Bonuses, bounties. The mask should come up and the body camera should go on. And there must be thorough, objective, and independent investigations into these killings. The Justice Department refused to cooperate with local investigators in Minnesota after Renee's death, and over a dozen career prosecutors in Minnesota and Washington resigned rather than take part in a miscarriage of justice. After Alex's killing, the federal government blocked state law enforcement from accessing the crime scene. I know because I got panic calls, because I used to be prosecutor in the county, about what was going on. A federal judge appointed by Donald Trump had to issue an order preventing the federal government from destroying evidence. I'm opposed to this ICE funding bill, and I am very appreciative that people are starting to talk about reforms to this agency. But the money that was passed this summer, $75 billion, making this agency bigger than the FBI, that was wrong. I opposed it, as did my Democratic colleagues. The costs continue to mount. Right now, our federal, state, and local governments are spending an estimated $18 million a week on the surge in Minnesota alone. And what do you got out of it? 2 out of 3 of the shootings resulting in death in Minneapolis, 2 out of 3 were caused by federal agents. I appreciate Senator Schumer, and I appreciate my colleague, Senator Smith, and so many others for saying no to this. And I truly appreciate that a number of our Republican colleagues have started to say that what ICE is doing is wrong. A few have said that Kristi Noem should no longer be in her job. ICE needs to leave Minnesota. It was in 1776 when future First Lady Abigail Adams wrote to her husband, John Adams, describing the retreat of British ships from Boston, saying that their numbers were so large they looked like a forest. But despite their force, it was the determination of those demanding liberty that won that day. For Minnesotans right now, every corner, everywhere, when you drive, really it's not just the city, suburbs, shopping malls, rural areas, they see an ICE agent. There's people that are scared every single day, and it feels like that forest. But out of that forest comes these people of our state that are willing to stand up, citizens that are willing to stand up to help people they may not even know, because they understand what's at stake for the liberties of this country. Mr. President, I yield back. Thank you.
So that was Senator
Mr.
Amy
President.
Klobuchar on the floor.
Senator from Minnesota.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I want to thank
my
colleague,
Smith here.
Senator Klobuchar, and all of our colleagues who are joining us on the floor this afternoon. So we are here today because we have a full-blown, dangerous emergency unfolding in Minnesota. It is happening right now as I speak, and we need your help to end it. America needs your help. The nation has been appalled by what we have seen happening in our state of Minnesota, the stories that have captured everyone's attention. 2 innocent United States citizens, Alex Preddy and Renee Good, shot and killed on the street in broad daylight by federal agents, just as they were trying to help their neighbors and document with their telephones what was going on, the brutality of it. A 5-year-old in a Spider-Man backpack, Liam Conejo Ramos. So Liam is coming home with his dad, and the agents are there, and Liam is trying to get inside. The agents try to use Liam as bait to lure the mother outside. And Liam is still in detention. He's still in Texas, a 5-year-old, 1,000 miles away from home. Colleagues, my head is so full of stories that might not have gotten all of the attention, but tell the tale of the brutality and the illegality of Operation Metro Surge in Minnesota. This is about a United States citizen, a young man who's walking out of his place of work to get lunch, and he sees an ICE agent. He's concerned. He's afraid that he might get targeted, so he turns around and he walks the other way, and the ICE agent runs after him and tackles the guy. He's a United States citizen, throws him to the ground, injures him, and detains him for hours. All the while, this young man has documents to prove who he is. It's about a teenager in Willmar, Minnesota. Now, Mr. President, Willmar is a smaller regional center in Minnesota. It is a place where the Genio turkey processing plant is. It is an incredible community. And here is a teenager in Willmar who is stopped by ICE. She is beaten. She gets a concussion. And she is detained for 2 days. And she is a United States citizen. So imagine, it's hard to imagine this, but imagine you're in your neighborhood and there are these roving bands of federal agents. They have no identification. They drive around in black Suburbans. They have masks over their face. And like at the drop of the hat, they just leap out and they go after people. They're restraining them. They're hitting them. They're spraying them with chemical agents. And then people are just shoved into Suburbans and driven off. And nobody really knows what happens to them. This is happening in Minnesota if it isn't happening in your neighborhood. And I want people to understand this is not just Minneapolis and St. Paul, where so many of the TV cameras have been. It is Rochester, Minnesota, where the schools are reporting a huge fall off of kids going to school because they're so afraid. Their families are so afraid to send them to school. It's in Mankato, Minnesota, which is in the southern part of the state. It is another regional center, a farming community. I heard today on the public radio station that the local immigrant rights organization is getting 400 calls a day from people who are trying to figure out what their rights are, what to do. A family member of mine is detained. I don't know where they are. This is happening in dozens of cities. So what we have here, colleagues, is a campaign. It is a campaign not about public safety. It is a campaign about fear and intimidation. This is about secret police roaming in our cities with no identification and no name tags. What they do is they overtly target individuals because of the accent that they have, the skin color that they have. And I'm not just imagining this as their motivation because these agents are telling people this is what's going on. I mean, this is the story of a Hmong woman that I met at Hmong Village just last week who in tears is telling me that her son has been detained. He's been gone for days and days and days, and she doesn't know when she's going to get him back. Where is he? This is about ICE agents going to a suburban restaurant in the Twin Cities, having lunch, and then after lunch, they go into the kitchen to detain the folks that are working in the kitchen. We are seeing this happen every single day. Battering down doors, breaking car windows. There's no pretext, there's no warrant. They're targeting people, not because they know that they've committed some crime, but because of what they look like. And there's this thing that we have in the Twin Cities now, they're called ghost cars. What's this? This is a car that is left in the street, the middle of the street sometimes, the door open, the engine running, the key still in the car, and nobody's gone. Nobody's there. People know what happened. ICE came and got whoever was driving the car and took them away. You know, if you are going through a legal immigration process in this country, you go through a process, and it's your obligation, your legal obligation, to check in with the federal authorities. And what's happening now is that folks are getting legal residence, getting a letter to appear. They have a choice. They know that if they don't comply, they're breaking the law, so of course they comply. But when they go to the courthouse, what happens is an agent is waiting outside the courthouse. An agent is there to detain that person who is following the law, who has done nothing wrong. In fact, they're doing everything they possibly can do to comply with the law, and yet they're being detained. These are not, my colleagues, these are not what you hear from this administration about the so-called worst of the worst. These are people that are active contributing members of our community. These are legal residents who hold green cards, who are being flown to Texas with no legal representation, no access to counsel. And you know what happens sometimes? They get down there, they go through another screening, and the federal agents say, okay, sorry about that, we made a mistake, and they just dump them on the streets of Houston or wherever they may be. No documents, no identification. How are they going to even get home? That's happening in this country right now. And if they're not released, because not everyone is released, if they are not released, people have died in custody. People with no criminal record have been deported to countries that they have never even known. So this is happening in Minnesota, but this is not just Minnesota. I think because Minnesota has resisted so strongly and because the tactics of Operation Metro Surge have been so brutal that we have gotten so much of the attention. But this is not just a Minnesota problem. I ask you, colleagues, to consider how these dangerous and poorly trained and unaccountable ICE agents have been treating Americans who have been exercising their constitutional right to peacefully speak and to demonstrate. These Americans have been intimidated, they have been taunted, they have been beaten, they have even been killed. We've seen the images of people being maced at point-blank range. You can see this in the final pictures of Alex Preddy before he is killed. We know that they are tracking demonstrators with facial ID technology, following them home to intimidate them. And in fact, I've heard stories of demonstrators who have been led home by ICE agents so that those agents are communicating, we know where you live, we know who you are, we want you to be quiet. Pepper balls, tear gas. And this is not just happening, colleagues, in situations of civil unrest. I'm not talking about riots here. I'm talking about a family that is trying to get home. They've got 6 kids in the car. They've been at basketball practice, and they end up with a can of tear gas thrown under their car. It explodes. It lifts the car up off the ground. And that family ends up in the emergency room. They need to be decontaminated from the poison. Now, I'm telling you these stories because I want you to understand a very important thing. What is going on in Minnesota is not about public safety. It has nothing to do with public safety. In fact, what's going on in Minnesota is hurting public safety. As Senator Klobuchar said, police chiefs of suburban communities have come forward and said, this is not sustainable, this is dangerous. A police chief told the story about how one of his own officers, who was off duty, was stopped for no reason by ICE agents, and they threatened to get her out of the car and take her away before she finally tells them, she decides, I have to tell them that I'm a police officer, and they leave her alone. This is about people dialing 911 because an ICE agent is at their home and they are so scared about what to do. So, Mr. President, I want to be clear, we are pro-public safety in Minnesota. We have worked often with federal authorities to catch bad guys and lock them up. But we need ICE out of Minnesota. What is really going on here is a systemic and organized campaign of fear and intimidation. This is government police sanctioned at the highest levels of our government, completely unbound, beating and attacking and detaining and arresting and killing American citizens. This is what America looks like with an authoritarian government with no laws. But here's what's happening. Not only in Minnesota, but around the country. Our constituents, your constituents, are watching these videos and they're hearing these stories and they are reading these reports, and what's happening is a sense of moral outrage is rising up. That feeling that you have in your gut that feeling of anguish and anger and disgust, that is that when you know that you're seeing something that is just wrong. You know that it is wrong and that you can't look away from it. And we are uplifted by this moral outrage and the incredible courage of Minnesotans, but we know what we are seeing here. And people are responding everywhere. I have talked to hundreds of people over the past few weeks about what is going on in Minnesota. People who are organizing mutual aid to get groceries and diapers to families, but small town folks that hate to see this happen to their neighbors, and local mayors and farmers and small businesses, Democrats, Republicans, people who aren't political at all, law enforcement officers, faith leaders, Second Amendment supporters, and civil libertarians. I mean, and the man in the truck that I saw when I was in Minneapolis taking groceries to people on Monday. He's in the truck, and I drive up. He's like first kind of concerned that I might be ICE, and then he's worried that I'm going to think that he's ICE, and we start to talk, and he says of the president, he said, I voted for him. I told my kids, I talked my kids into voting for him. And I am so upset. I am so embarrassed. I never thought that this would happen. This is so messed up. This, colleagues, is the coalition of the horrified, the people who see this and feel a sense of moral outrage, people who are bound together not by politics or faction or identity, but that feeling in your gut that what you're seeing is wrong and that we have to do something about it, that this can't be how we operate. So that brings us to here today in this august chamber of the United States Senate. And we ask ourselves, okay, what do we do? What is our place here? And we've all worked really hard to get here. And we all are here, I believe, because we love this country. And I suspect that almost all of us who serve in this chamber understand, they see the threat, we see the threat that this poses to the very underpinnings of our country. And I am so grateful to my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, who have spoken out, who have called for a fair and impartial investigation, who have called for changes of leadership. I agree with that. That's all really important. But colleagues, that is not going to be enough to stop this. This is a crucial moment in our country, not just for Minnesota, but for our entire country. And our answer to the question of what we do in the face of this illegality, this brutality, our answer to all those people, all those constituents who feel that sense of moral outrage, who are begging us to stand up for them, our answer can't be that we're not going to do anything. It can't be the status quo. It can't be, well, the procedures of the Senate and the House make it really impossible for us to get something done, so there's really not that much that we can do right now. That's not acceptable. But colleagues, I can see a path forward. And look, I want to be really clear. In my view, we need to start over with the Department of Homeland Security. I think it should be ripped down to the studs and that we should start over. But that is not the question for today. That is not the question for right now. Right now, we need to take immediate, common sense steps to stop the worst of the violence and the violations that Americans are suffering. So, to be clear, I will not vote for any funding for DHS if we do not take action to stop this emergency unfolding in my state. And I truly believe that we can find agreement on both sides of the aisle for a path forward. And it will not solve all of these problems, but we can address the worst of the assault. We need to end these roving patrols of federal agents that are detaining and arresting people who've done nothing wrong. You can't break down someone's door and arrest them without a warrant. We need accountability. I mean, ICE agents should be required to abide by the same set of laws, the same use of force standards that your local police department abides by. We need a fair and unbiased investigation. And we need no more of the secret police, no more masks and agents without proper identification and body cameras. I mean, to me, these seems like pretty simple and common sense and reasonable reforms that can only be achieved through the force of law. We are long past the moment where any letter or executive order or promise can secure our trust. This is our path forward. I am thinking about, as I wrap up this speech, and I'm thinking about all of my colleagues who are here to speak with such intention about what's happening. I want to just take a pause to acknowledge my beloved Minnesota. I am so proud to be your senator. And you know, so many people around the country are looking to you, to us, for hope. And you are showing the world how to respond to violence and how to stand up to bullies with strength and with dignity and with peace. You're putting your own safety and your own bodies on the line to protect your neighborhoods and your democracy. You're risking your own safety to document the emergency and the inhumanity unfolding on our streets. And you're even sometimes doing it by singing. In Minnesota, we show up for our neighbors. We help people out. We don't give in to bullies. We stand strong. We stand in the park with a candle in our hands to mourn, but also to kindle hope. And I know that Minnesotans are going to stay strong because, as Dr. King preached, we know how to put our faith into action. As Dr. King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
You just saw both Senators Amy Klobuchar and Tina Smith addressing the Senate floor there, talking about all the current state of affairs that's happening in Minnesota. And we want to get into some of the things that we said, but I want to do a little programming note. We are on standby right now. There is a day of action press conference that's supposed to take place at any moment inside the Federal Courthouse Plaza in downtown Minneapolis. Student and community organizers from across the Twin Cities are going to be speaking, and they are calling for another Ice Out Friday. So you probably remember the Friday last week, the temperature -10. Senator Klobuchar spoke about this, where there were tens of thousands of people that were marching in downtown Minneapolis from US Bank Stadium to Target Center, where they held a big rally there, all calling for ICE to get out of Minnesota. Organizers are calling for the exact same thing this Friday, January 30th. No work, no school, no shopping, just like last Friday. And that's what this press conference is going to be all about. I can see it there in the corner of my eye. It looks like they're getting all set up.
Sorry, wrong bit.
There you go. There's the image that we're looking at, Paul.
This is the one. Yeah, they're just getting ready and set for this press conference. They actually did set up outside. They were no more than 5 minutes ago. Everyone was outside getting ready to start, and I think the decision was made because they were going to be out for such a long time that they needed to reposition indoors. So that's what we're seeing there now. That podium, everyone's starting to get there and come together in advance of this press conference. It's happening any minute now.
And if you're watching us from across the country and you're not in Minnesota, let me again stress the weather at play here. It is a very cold day here in Minnesota, just like it was last Friday. But even despite those cold temperatures, people still coming out, protesting, marching in unison together. So when that press conference gets started, and again, it's going to get started any second now, we'll be bringing that to you live. In the meantime, Senator Klobuchar, if you were listening closely to her, she brought up a number of amendments to the United States Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and talking about how some of these amendments have been, in her perspective, have been violated by the Trump administration and by the Department of Homeland Security. Obviously, Amendment number 1, the freedom of religion, speech, press, assembly, and petition. But Amendment number 2 is a very interesting one that she was talking about, the right to bear arms. Of course, the controversy with Alex Preddy was that he was a lawful gun owner. I'm going to pause myself for a second here because I think that press conference is getting started right now. Let's take a listen in.
And if we don't get it, shut it down. And if we don't get it, shut it down. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming and joining us here. My name is Ibrahim Subullah. I'm a Somali community organizer here in Minneapolis. And over the last 2 months, ICE and CBP have invaded our city and our state, have terrorized our communities. They have hoped that we would cower in fear. They tried to make an example out of us, but we have instead set an example of how to resist and respond to this terror. Less than 2 weeks after Renee Nicole Good was murdered, we shut down the state. Some call it the first general strike in 80 years. What we understand is, and what it is undeniable, that we made history. The action electrified the country, and the images of the shutdown spread like wildfire across the world. The morning after this historic show of people power, Custom and Border Patrol killed another member of our community, Alex Peretti. This horrific, disgusting execution-style murder was what Trump hoped was to knock the energy out of us, knock the wind out of us. He wanted us to back down, but instead we're going to double down. There will be no business as usual while ICE terrorizes our community. Minnesota-based Somali and Black student organizations, small business owners, faith groups, community organizations, and more have made a call to shut it down this Friday and hold a mass demonstration at the Government Plaza at 2 p.m. Minnesota calls those all across the country to join us. In the last 24 hours, over 1,000 organizations have endorsed this call, and it's gone viral. Last Friday, Minnesota showed the country how to respond to these attacks. Now it is time to spread the spirit of resistance across the country. To start off, the first speaker will be the President of the Somali Student Association at the University of Minnesota, Dahir. Round of applause.
Hello, everyone. As some of you may already know, my name is Dahir Munye, and I'm the president of the Somali Student Association at the University of Minnesota. Last week, we held the first general strike in decades. Over 100,000 people attended, and we all came together to stand up and speak up on the horrific crimes that ICE agents have been committing, not only here in our city, but all around the country. The very next morning, ICE agents murdered Alex Peretti. They wanted to intimidate us and to spread fear in our hearts, but that isn't going to work. And that's exactly why we are back. We are going to continue this fight. And the only way to truly fight back is to extend and expand the shutdown movement from last Friday. That's why we have made the call to shut it down again this Friday, January 30th at 2 p.m. at the Government Plaza. Over 100,000 organizations have already endorsed us in this nationwide shutdown, and we are asking you guys to please join us. We are very appreciative to those who took the time out of their day to join this movement. Both local and national businesses are closing up shop, and this is just the beginning. Together, Minnesota will stand up against ICE. Thank you.
Thank you, Dahir. The next speaker will be the Executive Director of the Council of American Islamic Relations, Jelani.
I want to be very clear that Minnesota is leading the nation at this moment. We did not choose this moment, but this moment chose us. We are standing up for our neighbors, and by doing so, we are showing the rest of the country how to defeat ICE. We're doing it with a whistle, a warm heart, and a care for our neighbors. And because of that, we have lost two incredible people, Renee Good and Alex Peretti. But in this moment, it is a time for people to stand up for our Constitution and to not allow this administration to use its authority and abuse it by sending masked, untrained men to our streets to not only target those who are here legally, those who are U.S. citizens, but to target the overwhelming brown and black community as well as our indigenous community. But what Minnesota has shown is that we are Minnesota strong. And we are right here to tell everyone that victory is near. Not only yesterday, we learned the demotion and the nearly firing of the commander of ICE administration, Bavino. He has left Minnesota after being de-iced by Minnesotans. And we are waking up to a new day in America where the commander is no longer the commander. Yes, they can replace him with Holman or any other person, but we know in this moment the lies of this administration, the lies of this president are not going unchecked. In fact, more and more Americans are waking up to this moment. But the question that comes to everybody, what can I do at home? What can I do? How do I continue to stand up? Well, as Minnesotans are standing up right now, we are asking for the rest of the people across the country in the United States today to stand with Minnesota. Be Minnesota strong. And that starts this Friday by not going to school, by not shopping, and not opening the stores. We need a general strike, and we need to continue the momentum here in Minnesota across the country. So many people thought that in the coldest days, Minnesotans would stay home. But when Minnesotans are bonded with their neighbors, we decided to come out on the streets. Nearly 100,000 people came out in one of the coldest days. Yes, we know how to bundle up and we know how to stand up for our neighbors, and that's what we did. This momentum needs to continue. Victory is around the corner. We are winning as a community, and we are defeating fascism and authoritarianism right here in Minnesota. Stand with us. Stand up. Speak up. And in this moment, be like Minnesotan. Be Minnesota strong. And this strike is part of that. This action is part of that. Everyone can participate from every part of the United States and support this work. And I want to acknowledge the leadership of our young students and leaders who are stepping up in this moment, who are continuing this fight. Yes, last Friday was a historic day, not only in Minnesota, but across the country. We can build on that on this Friday, and there will be more opportunities and more actions to do that. But do not stay home. Do not be among the people that watched the moment like this. Be among the people who stood on the ground with their neighbors and filled the streets with warm hearts, because in this moment we are winning. And I believe that this moment will pass and America will be stronger because of Minnesotans. But do your part, stand up in this moment. Tell your great-grandchildren that you were among the people that stood your ground when the democracy was under attack. Thank you.
Thank you, Jelani. Next speaker would be Rod Adams from the New Justice Project, Minnesota.
Thank you. Again, my name is Rod Adams. I'm the Executive Director and Founder of the New Justice Project, Minnesota. So as Jelani just said, last Friday, there was close to 100,000 people in the streets marching to push ICE outside of Minnesota. A lot of people call that extraordinary. And yes, it was extraordinary because we're not living in ordinary times. And additionally, we are winning. Greg Bovino is left. And we've seen the front runner for governor, Chris Madell, drop out of the race because he does not want to stand with this GOP as it is today. But also, we can't take our foot off their necks. We have seen what the power of people can do. Those two instances, getting Greg Bovino demoted or fired, and having Chris Madell, who was the leading GOP candidate for the gubernatorial race, step down. We have been winning, but the fight's not over. Prior to the murder of Alex Preddy, we saw the murder of Renee Good. And also, we saw the fraudulent arrest of our sisters, Nakima Levy-Armstrong and Chantel Allen. And just today, Pam Bondi released a list of names of activists and organizers here in Minnesota who have been arrested on fraudulent charges when all they were attempting to do was stand up for their community. So yes, we should make sure that on Friday, no one goes to school, no one goes to work, and no one goes shopping. Because the fight is not over. And an injury to one is an injury to all. We don't know where this is going to end up, but the thing that we do know is the power stands with people. Everyday people who have the opportunity to use their voice, to use their pocketbook, and to use their telephone to tell their neighbors, it is not over. The fight is still going on. Until ICE leaves Minnesota, we will continue to fight. Until ICE is defunded, we will continue to fight. The story does not end with what happened on Friday. It does not end with the murder of Alex Preddy at the hands of Border Patrol agents. It ends with the people standing up and winning, affecting the economy. So on Friday, 1:30, you can start at 1:30 if you want, but on 1:30, we're calling for a general strike. And I want to be clear. We wouldn't be making this call right now if it wasn't for the young people standing behind me. From young folks who were organizing during the civil rights era, desegregating our roadways and fighting for voting rights, to the Black Lives Matter movement. To this moment, young people have led the way. So if you're wondering if this call is for you, understand that young people are always right. And this is an axe from New Justice Project Minnesota who've endorsed this general strike, that everyone in this country, not just here in Minnesota, stand with the young folks who are behind me. We have so much work to do. And our story will not end with Greg Bovino getting fired. It won't end with Chris Madell stepping down. It won't end with some ICE agents leaving the state of Minnesota. It will end when ICE is abolished. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Christoph. He's the executive board member for the Graduate Labor Union at the University of Minnesota.
Hello, everyone. I apologize if my voice is tired and cracking. I've been protesting since Saturday. I've been gassed. So I apologize for my voice again. My name is Christos Harakas, and I am the Chief Division Steward for the St. Paul Division of the Graduate Labor Union, Union Electric, Local 1105. I am a student, a researcher, a mentor, and teaching assistant. I've lived in the Twin Cities for my entire life. That's 32 years. My feelings about the current state of our great cities are mixed. On one end, I have a deep sadness and a burning anger in opposition to the horrible treatment of my neighbors and friends. At the same time, I feel an overwhelming pride in and solidarity with the hundreds of thousands of Minnesotans that have been showing up and standing up against authoritarianism for this last year, for the duration of Operation Metro Surge, which is a lame name, by the way, and especially on the days following the deaths of Renee Good, Alex Peretti, and I don't want to forget Keith Porter Jr., who did not have the video evidence to give his side of the story before his life was taken. These are the names spread far and wide, but there were 32 people who died in ICE custody in 2025, including the strangulation of Gerard Lunas Campos and Victor Manuel Diaz. And there have been 16 instances of ICE shooting civilians in the last 7 months. And beyond this, there have been an untold number of violent incidents and intimidation acts since the current administration took over. I want to take the time to tell some of the stories of these non-lethal events. I hope this helps those listening understand that ICE cannot just stop shooting citizens in the street and everything will be okay. ICE must get out of our cities entirely. ICE out. ICE out. At the end of last semester, we had a young Somali student in our class come to us holding back tears. Her parents had been taken, and she didn't know what to do. She had other family members to take care of and didn't know where her parents were. We were able to accommodate her on the academic side of things, but knowing how kind this young girl was and how she has been treated over the last months, it makes me angry. She's been called garbage, had her parents taken away, and has had to deal with an increase of hateful, racist rhetoric, both online and in our communities. She does not deserve this. No one does. The other day, a family member of mine found Ziploc bags filled with printouts of racial slurs and caricatures, one of which was of George Floyd, and an outright claim to hate Jewish people and people of color. Dozens of these were dropped off among the neighborhood throughout St. Paul and Minneapolis. Upon bringing these to the police, they responded with, "We've seen worse, just throw them away." It makes me sad, and it makes me very angry. I have more than one friend from my days as a chef who will not leave their home due to fear of being detained, and childhood friends who have closed their businesses indefinitely. They are documented, but that doesn't matter. It just makes me so sad and angry. A friend working in a school store talks of it being almost empty and hearing whispers on the wind that ICE is waiting outside buildings and taking students. I have heard of students and friends spending all of their time off helping with rapid response so more documentation of violence can happen and more de-escalation can hopefully be achieved. They also spend their time bringing groceries to those trapped in their homes or other places. They're at late-night community meetings trying to reach as many people to help as possible before getting up in the morning for another 8 to 10 hour workday. I see the exhaustion in their eyes and the anxiety in their gait. It makes me proud, but it makes me sad. What has the university done? Provided a link to mental health resources, made most doors keycard accessible, and given us empty words of comfort as they wash their hands of what ICE will do and is doing on our campus? That makes me angry. If the university cared, they would take a stand against ICE. They won't even mention them. Our faculty members have all had to come up with their own plans for how to deal with students in fear. Our campus security has not been given a plan whatsoever. Business as usual cannot go on and will not go on like this. That's why I and the Graduate Labor Union have endorsed and called upon the university to participate in another day of shutdown operations. In respect of Alex Peretti, a UMN alumni, of Renee Good, a caring neighbor, and of Keith Porter Jr., killed in silence. Shut down in respect of all the university community members, stories I've just told, and the untold suffering of my international students, friends in my cohort, the postdocs stuck in their home countries, the international faculty members who brave this world to advise and teach us. For me, who looks at every license plate and tinted window in expectation and readiness to risk what I must to protect those I care about. And on Saturday was gassed, surrounded by flashbang grenades, tear gas, and men in masks with batons at the intersection of 26th and Nicollet in Minneapolis. I want to share one last story with you. There was a video yesterday circulating of an ICE agent telling a man that, quote, "If you raise your voice, I'll erase your voice." Well, I'm raising my voice, and I am not afraid of you. Let us raise our voices together to show him, to show all of them, we're not afraid of you, and we do not want you here. ICE out! ICE out! ICE out! ICE out! ICE out! ICE out!
Thank you, Christoph. The next speaker we're going to have is Guto. He's the president of the Black Student Union at the University of Minnesota.
Hello, everyone. Unfortunately, I have to be back here today. But it's not too unfortunate for me because at the end of the day, I'm here as a student. My name is Gutu Chinkiso. I'm president of the Black Student Union at the University of Minnesota. I'm back here today to continue showing the undeniable power of student voices. The voices that refuse to be ignored and refuse to be silenced. To remind people that students are not passive, we are organized, we are informed, and ready to lead. We are advocating not just for ourselves, but for every community harmed by violence. And beyond any title I hold, any role I play, I'm a human being. And I just want this terror to end, truly. Last week, we stood outside in negative 30-degree weather and showed the country and the world that Minnesota will do whatever it takes to stand up against the terrors of ICE. We showed courage, we showed unity, we showed power, and they're afraid of that. And how do they respond? By killing another neighbor, a U.S. citizen, an ICU nurse, whose life was dedicated to saving others. Say his name, Alex Peretti.
Alex Peretti.
This was deliberately done to push us to continue to feel helpless. But we can't fall into that mindset. That has never and will never work. The only reasonable response to this violence is to continue to expand. The general strike we began last week, we want to continue to push that. This Friday, January 30th, we call on you all yet again and all the people across the country to make this nationwide. This is a shutdown against racism. It's a shutdown against terror, and it's rooted in a long legacy of resistance. Black student unions were not created to be quiet in moments like this. We were created to lead. From the civil rights movements to today, BSU has always stood on the front lines of justice, refusing to accept oppression as normal. We will not be intimidated. We will not be silenced, and we will not move on. We continue to ask organizations, student groups, unions, labor organizations, faith groups, and community institutions to endorse this nationwide shutdown by going to nationalshutdown.org. This moment requires coordination, courage, and commitment. So we will continue to organize, we'll continue to mobilize, and we'll continue to say the names of those taken from us until ICE is out. ICE out. So until justice is no longer something that we beg for, but it's something that becomes reality, because history has never remembered comfort, it remembers courage, it remembers resistance, and it remembers those who stood up. So we're here again today to say, ICE out. ICE out. Thank you.
Thank you, Guto. And the next speaker is Suleiman from CARE.
My name is Suleiman Adan, Suleiman, last name Adan, Adan. I'm the Deputy Executive Director at CARE Minnesota. I'll speak plainly. The powers that be don't want us to continue to march. The powers that be don't want us to continue to protest. The powers that be don't want us to show up at the Whipple building and standing up for our brothers and sisters that are detained. The powers that be don't want us to show up at the memorials. The powers that be don't want us to lift the names of those like Alex Peretti and Renee Good and Keith Porter. They don't want us to do that. The powers that be don't want us to show up in the people's house at the state capitol and march up to the governor's office. The powers that be want us to only announce a nationwide shutdown inside City Hall. They don't want us to march into City Hall. And I echo those that came before me, the student leaders as well, that we will continue to march, we will continue to protest, we'll continue to document until ICE not only is out of the city of Minneapolis, state of Minnesota, but ICE is out nationwide. Thank you.
Thank you, Suleiman. Our next speaker is Rowan Wilkins, Executive Board Director of Graduate Labor Union of the University of Minnesota.
Hi, my name is Rowan, and I'm on the Executive Board of UMN GLUE UE, Local 1105. On Friday, we held a historic shutdown where over 10,000 people hit the streets. Minneapolis has been the center of the fight against ICE. And we are no stranger to ICE's terror campaign. Already, 6 graduate students were detained by ICE in September. The time to act is now, to get ICE out of Minneapolis, out of Minnesota, and to end these racist attacks on our community. In the face of Trump's racist terror campaign against our immigrant neighbors, friends, co-workers, organized labor has the responsibility to take bold and courageous action. As working people, we are the ones that make this economy run. And we also have the power to shut it down. That's why we need to expand and extend the shutdown from last Friday to this Friday, January 30th. Over 1,000 organizations have endorsed the shutdown on Friday, and it's only growing. I encourage organizations all across Minnesota and the entire country to endorse this shutdown at nationalshutdown.org to make this even larger than last Friday. Thank you.
Welcome back here to the afternoon shift. That you just heard this ICE out protest that's scheduled again for this upcoming Friday. Of course, there was one last Friday. This one they're calling for nationwide. No work, no school, no shopping. All right, we are going to turn the page just a little bit and bring into the conversation Paul Schnell. Paul Schnell is the commissioner for the Minnesota Department of Corrections. They recently included a page on their website titled Combatting DHS Misinformation. It's made some news both locally and nationally, and we want to hear more about it. So without further ado, let's bring in the commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Corrections, Mr. Paul Schnell. Paul, welcome to the afternoon shift. How are you, sir?
Thank you, Adam. I'm well, thanks.
Yes, I know it's a difficult time, and we really appreciate you taking some time for us. On your website, sir, you write that the DOC, the Department of Corrections, is claiming that DHS is releasing false numbers about ICE detainers. I think there's a lot of people at home that don't know exactly what is an ICE detainer. Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, an ICE detainer. So first and foremost, I think it's important that when a non-U.S. citizen comes into the Department of Corrections custody, by state law, we are required to notify ICE of that person's presence in our system. They then do what they do in terms of determining their lawful status in the country. And if they determine that they are not here lawfully, they issue a detainer. And a detainer is effectively a hold for that person. And so that when that person approaches the end of their sentence, and in Minnesota, that's after service of 2/3 of the court-imposed sentence, several weeks prior to their release date, we would notify ICE that the release date is coming up. And ICE will make a determination if they wish to take custody of that person. In most cases, recently, they do. And then our staff facilitate the transfer of custody to ICE on the appointed day of release. And this has been longstanding practice and policy in the department. And the detainers are recognized as a matter of regular course of business.
Paul, I think one big sticking point between the Department of Corrections and ICE has been sort of the ownership over arrests. The Department of Corrections, and I got these numbers right from your website, identified 68 cases in which individuals were lawfully transferred from DOC custody directly to ICE, yet ICE said that they arrested these individuals. Why was it important for you, sir, and your office to make it clear that this was not technically the case, that ICE did not arrest these individuals?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. One is that ICE and the Department of Homeland Security has been using these numbers to justify the surge in Minnesota, the high number of agents and the tactics that were being used, which, we simply, do not support. Second of all, I think, we think it's important for Minnesotans to know that the Department of Corrections follows these protocols because it's in the best interest of public safety to notify ICE and to turn them over to custody. And so for ICE to be claiming that they've taken custody of these people or they swept them up in Operation Metro Surge, it simply is not the case and not true. And we want Minnesotans to know that their Department of Corrections does cooperate with ICE and does turn over to custody those people that ICE issues a detainer on.
I want to unpack something that you just said there, Mr. Schnell, that you all are cooperating with ICE. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, she has said, I think multiple times now, that the state of Minnesota is not cooperating with ICE, which when she's referring to the state of Minnesota, she would, of course, be referring to your office as well. How does that make you feel when you hear the Department of Homeland Security Secretary say that, despite that you feel like you all are cooperating with ICE?
So first and foremost, it's blatantly false. And then secondly, it just causes me to wonder, what's the reason for making statements like that simply flame and fuel and grow a level of mistrust if it's either a matter of a question of like improper management of data, incompetence around the management of data, or there is some purpose around the reason for stating these types of misinformation regularly and overly, and that might be to justify the actions that are taking place in Minnesota. And as we see, the outcomes have been disastrous. Not simply, the loss of life being the most dramatic among that, but then look at the outpouring of concern, not just in Minnesota, but across the nation around the tactics that have been used here, and in particular, when the state has engaged in regular cooperation around turning over and working with ICE around those people who have criminal backgrounds and records and represent a risk to public safety. We want to make sure those people are deported if they don't have a lawful right to be here. And so that's why we take the position we do. But when the secretary is using these numbers as a justification or saying that we are not cooperating, it causes us to begin to wonder what's the motive behind that.
Again, just want to unpack something that you said there, disastrous outcomes regarding this language. And then, of course, trying to find, legitimate criminals. And like you said, some people, you want to work in cooperation to make sure that ICE is taking care of them and handing them over. On Saturday, one of those disastrous outcomes was the killing of Alex Preddy in the Whittier neighborhood in Minneapolis. They came out and I mean, Border Patrol Chief Greg Bavino came out and said that operation was targeting an individual named Jose Huerta Chuma. Bavino said that he had, quote, significant criminal history. What is the Department of Corrections knowledge on this individual, Huerta Chuma?
First of all, he did have some relatively minor involvements, a lot of some traffic-related offenses and so forth. And so, that was really the focus. But the most confounding part of this whole thing is the fact that that individual was in ICE custody in 2018 for several weeks and was released back into the community by ICE. And now he's among the worst of the worst. And that's troubling and confounding and just simply doesn't make sense. And I think, what we are really wanting to find is a way forward here, a way forward that addresses the public safety interests of our state and focuses on targeted enforcement of people who truly represent a risk to public safety.
Yeah, and important to note there, like you said, he was in ICE custody in 2018. That was President Trump's first administration, and then, like you said, he got released back. And like you said, he was called one of the worst of the worst. So I guess my next question to you, Mr. Schnell, is: are the worst of the worst, the quote unquote, the real bad guys, are they out in the streets in the Twin Cities and across Minnesota? I think that the administration makes it seem like they're kind of living among us. They're kind of everywhere. Is this the case in your eyes?
Well, so I think first and foremost, if they've been through the state's prison system, ICE was notified, first that they were in our custody, second that they were being released. And we do know of cases where people have been served as the custodial portion of their sentence. They were released to ICE. ICE did whatever processing was necessary through the detention format that typically follows after we release them to ICE. And then they are subsequently released back into the community. And when that happens, the Department of Corrections or correctional supervision partners across the state take up the correctional supervision of those people in accordance with their sentence. So there can be people who are in the community that have been engaged in very serious offenses in the past. They have served the custodial portion of their sentence, but it's important for people to realize that they were released by ICE after we turned custody over to them following the completion of their custodial sentence.
Paul Schnell, the commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Corrections. I'm not so sure if this is exactly your lane, but I think a lot of people at home probably wonder, what happens to these individuals when they do get detained by ICE? Where are they going? There's a rally that's happening as we speak right now at the Dilley Detention Center in Dilley, Texas, where the 5-year-old, we were taking a live feed from the Senate floor. Both Amy Klobuchar and Senator Tina Smith both mentioned this 5-year-old Liam. He's currently being held there. What is life like inside one of those detention centers, if you have any knowledge of that?
Well, I can't speak to it specifically. I haven't been in. I think we know ICE is using some private custodial centers, some that they operate, some that they contract with. We know here in Minnesota there are some jails who provide for ICE detention in our state. Those jails are subject to the standards of licensure and regular inspection. So, we do know what those standards are, but I can't speak to what it's like in other states or exactly what that looks like in some of these larger ICE detention facilities, for instance, in Texas.
Yeah. Let's get back to one of the reasons why we brought you here, which is this Combatting DHS Misinformation page on your website. Sir, I'll ask you, what are you most concerned about regarding this misinformation, like you say, that's coming from DHS? And what is the Department of Corrections? How are you making Minnesotans feel more peace of mind that maybe that this is not the case, that everything is going to be, okay, and not to believe everything that they're hearing?
Well, I think first and foremost, we think it's important that we do have a level of transparency, and we want to show our receipts, so to speak, for what's happening. And that was the reason why we released the video of ICE taking custody of a couple of people who were being released from the DOC. And then following day, they indicated that those arrests were made as a part of Operation Metro Surge, and which simply wasn't accurate. It was a coordinated, regular transfer of custody. But beyond that, I think it's important that we share this information because it is the misinformation that is being used to justify the continued tactics. Again, I think no one really has significant concerns about focusing on those people that are here unlawfully, that have engaged in serious criminal activity, that represent a threat to public safety. I think the challenge is that while the messaging that we've heard is that is the focus of ICE and Customs and Border Patrol activities in the state, the reality doesn't reflect that. If that was the case, there would certainly be much higher levels of outreach and coordination with us and with with sheriffs across the state. And while those things are beginning to happen now that Mr. Homan's in town and has been tasked with bringing some resolution to these issues, hopefully, the reality is we simply did not want misinformation to be guiding or informing the uptick in both the tactics of ICE and Customs Border Patrol, and the havoc that has been seen all across Minnesota, which is a great concern.
You bring up Mr. Homan's name. That's Tom Homan, the border czar. He is now on the ground here in Minnesota. Gregory Pavino is now home. Homan is here. Have you had any conversations with Mr. Homan yourself, sir?
I've been a participant in a conversation with him and with the governor and my counterpart in the Department of Public Safety, and with the goal of trying to tamp down the kind of the heat and bring down the rhetoric and see the number of enforcement officers in Minnesota drawn down a bit, and then to identify some meaningful strategies around immigration enforcement and targeted enforcement, and finally, I think it does become important, and I think in our state's interest, to make sure that these investigations are transparent. So while the investigations into the shooting I'm speaking of, I think the reason I say that and talk about all of those things as it relates to misinformation is that if misinformation is is the basis for the actions, it's really important that we show what's actually happening, and to challenge that and to indicate that there is a level of interest, certainly, in bringing down the heat in Minnesota, and in finding some ways forward.
Mr. Schnell, I wish we had more time with you, and I would love to talk about those transparent investigations. I've got questions about the BCA and all of that. We just don't have time to get to that. So I'll leave you with this, sir. There are Minnesotans across the state, people around the country watching this, looking for signs of hope, looking for signs of potential peace coming to our state. What's the one message, based on all the privileged conversations that you've had with the governor, with Mr. Homan, with other officials? What's the one message that you have for the people that are just trying to cling on to some hope of peace here?
Well, I think right at this time, we are cautiously hopeful. Mm-hmm. And I think that certainly the position that we find ourselves, we want to find a way forward. That has been the governor's goal, and that certainly has been what's been messaged by the White House. And we're hearing that from Mr. Homan as well. And so we're hopeful that we can find that. But I think that really is going to be demonstrated, not just talked about, because misinformation has guided some of the things that have gotten us here. And so we need to see and should expect more.
Paul Schnell, the commissioner for the Minnesota Department of Corrections. Mr. Schnell, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. All right. That was a great interview there, and a lot of good information coming out of the Department of Corrections in regards to the current situation that's on the ground here in Minnesota. Paul, I know you are busy back there, and I know you're saying goodbye to Mr. Schnell, so hopefully you can hear me. And when you get a second, I just want you to serve as air traffic control here. There you are.
Air traffic control. I'm just saying goodbye
Yes,
to
sir.
Paul and thanking him for a great chat. Now, one thing that I want to tell you know, which I know that we haven't had a proper chance to have a conversation about, is that rally that's taking place down in
Dilley.
That is coming in live right now. And so what we'd like to do, because it is obviously about Liam, that little munchkin with the rabbit hat that we all fell in love with, that is coming in live. So I'm going to take us out to that as we speak. So stand by for that. We are taking you to Dilley, Texas. Texas? Correct.
Yes. This is outside the Dilley Detention Center in Dilley, Texas, where that 5-year-old boy, I was just talking about him with Mr. Schnell, Liam, is being held right now. There's a rally going on. Let's take a look.
Same story over and over and over about how they were depressed, about how they weren't eating, about how children were throwing up. We went into a housing facility because I don't know that they were really trying to take us into one, but we went, and there was an area that was almost set up like a kids' play area. And we walked in, and as soon as we walked in, everyone kind of flooded towards us. And at some point in time, it seems like they told us that they were actually educating these kids. And the kids were like, no, we're not in school. We're not getting anything. And so my staffer is like, what's up? Because y'all told us they were getting this. They reopened this facility that had been shuttered under the Biden-Harris administration. They reopened this facility back in April of last year. They continue to house children there, and they are not getting any education. Their education is being thwarted. And then when pressed about it, they said, well, we're working on it. And I said, well, what exactly are you doing? They said, well, we're going to get some packets in here. And I said, what are the packets going to do? Are you going to have teachers? Well, we have somebody that has an educational background. Listen, I did criminal defense work, y'all. I'm here to tell you that the treatment that these people are suffering under right now is worse than those that are accused and sometimes even convicted of crimes. That's how bad it is. So people wonder, like, why is it that people are outraged? Why is it that the people in Minneapolis have taken to the streets? Because they are kidnapping their neighbors. We know that Trump lied. We know that all he does is lie. Because the first thing I wanted to know was how many criminal convictions do y'all have? How bad are these folks? Oh, no. You can't be here and have a record. Y'all, I can't tell you how many innocent, precious children we talk to. We talked to a 16-year-old, and one of my staffers says, man, the level of maturity on that kid. That kid had about 4 younger siblings and his mom. They had been there for 8 months. When we walked in, they gave us a packet, and it said the average detention time was 28 days. We didn't meet anybody who had been there for less than probably 2 months. This is not right. And when I asked the person that is over the attorneys that are there to represent the government, I asked them, I said, what is happening? You've been here long enough. You're a government employee. You've been here through various administrations. And frankly, he said, the difference is somehow they're trying to prosecute these cases while keeping people in custody. That is not what they normally would do. That is what this administration has decided to do. They have decided to play with people mentally. They have decided to tell people things like, well, you're not going to be able to see your kids if you do this, or we're not going to do this if you do that, or we're not going to give you your court dates. This is terrible what is happening. And I really don't know what it's going to take for there to be a wake-up call in this country, but I am here to tell you that we are supposed to be better than this. We talk to people that are saying, you know what, I'm from Cuba, as one woman said, and she was crying profusely saying, and they are sending me to Ecuador. What are we doing? So I'm here standing with my colleague because, no, we won't fund this nonsense. We both voted no on that bill. We are asking our colleagues in the Senate to do their part. Stand up for people. Stand up and show them what humanity looks like. We know this administration doesn't care about us, but frankly, when people literally are talking about the water that they are drinking is not safe, if you allow this to continue to happen, then you are complicit. We have to do our part as the legislative branch. We have the power of the purse, not the president. It is time for us to flex our power. So thank you so much for being here. I am now going to turn it over to my colleague who leads up the Congressional Progressive Caucus and is representing a portion of San Antonio as well as Austin. Greg Kassar.
Thank you, Congresswoman, and thank you so much for being down here and visiting Dilley. And of course, thank you to my colleague, Congressman Castro. I'm Greg Casada. I'm proud to represent the ground we stand on in San Antonio as long as they'll let me. Quiero que la gente aquí en San Antonio sepa que estamos aquí luchando para la liberación de Liam Ramos. Estamos aquí luchando para sacar a ICE de nuestras calles, de nuestras cortes, y diciéndole a nuestro gobierno que queremos que el gobierno federal se enfoque en nuestra seguridad y bienestar, no en separar a nuestras familias. Estamos aquí para liberar a Liam Ramos. Punto y fin. Today we say with one voice, free Liam Ramos. Free Liam Ramos. Donald Trump ran for the presidency, saying he was going to go after, quote, the worst of the worst. Today, he is holding a 5-year-old in a prison. Last year, they arrested 3,800 minors. You've seen the picture. A small child, Spider-Man backpack, scared and alone, used as bait by federal agents. Whatever your politics, I'd ask you to stop for a moment and imagine that that's your child, your little boy or little girl. That should break the heart of every American. This does not make anyone safer, and it makes us all less free. So the question before us is, what do we do? What do we do? And there's a lot that we can do. Share these stories. Talk to everyone you know about how what the president is saying is a lie. You've seen it before your very eyes. Liam is not the only young person who's had his life destroyed or turned upside down by chaos and cruelty of Trump's deportation policies. At Liam's school alone, at least 3 other kids have been taken away by ICE. Kids. Here in Texas, I know of a U.S. citizen child with a brain tumor who was deported away from her doctors here, and she has not been allowed to return. I'm in touch with the family of Ani Lopez Bellosa, a college student here from Texas, who was deported, and the Trump administration said that they deported her by mistake. They haven't let her come back. We cannot rest until Liam Ramos is released, until these families are brought back home, and of course until we have justice for Renee Good, Alex Preddy, and everyone else that has faced these devastating policies. The chaos has to end, and the cruelty has to end. Something else we have to do is to get organized, know our rights, and speak up, and demand immediate change in Washington, D.C. We can't just wait until the next election. That's why earlier this month, alongside Congresswoman Crockett and Congressman Castro, I voted against sending any more money to ICE. And now we need Senate Democrats to stand strong and demand an immediate end to these mass deportation policies that put us here in the first place. The Senate must demand that ICE stop invading our cities, take the masks off and put badges on. They have to stop detaining and deporting innocent people like Liam and his family. We need them to get out of our courthouses like they are here in Bexar County. Stop the warrantless arrests. And we must impeach the people responsible. Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller have to go yesterday. And I want to remind folks watching at home and the folks here that there has to be a better world after this. And one thing that we haven't talked enough about, that we need to remember, is that when there is a new president in the White House, we can't leave communities behind like those in San Antonio ever again. We have to make front and center, top priority, passing finally comprehensive immigration reform so that the millions of people like Liam and his family have some fairness, and so that no president can ever do again what Donald Trump has done to Liam and so many other families here in Bexar County. Thank you guys very much. And I'm passing it along to somebody, but their name is hiding under my folder. Dear colleague and friend, I'm proud to call up State Representative Gina Hinojosa.
I'm State Representative Gina Hinojosa. I'm also running to be the next governor of Texas. And I want to thank everybody who is here today to highlight and put attention on what is happening, because what we know is that there is an effort to censor the criticism, the negativity, the truth that is happening with these ICE raids, that is happening with these children who are being taken. We experienced it ourselves. We tried posting it on social media, on TikTok. We were shadow banned from posting criticism of ICE. That's why it is so important we're here to speak out. First, I want to speak to the fear that people are experiencing back home. The fear is real. People are scared. Americans are scared because we have all witnessed with our own eyes the brutality, the violence, and even the killings at the hand of a lawless government. We mourn even the killings of Americans. We see the fear in the eyes of children snatched from their families, treated like hardened criminals. And we know that many of these families are American families that are being targeted. Because for many of us, we come from mixed status families. That is my own experience, in fact. And we know that people are being targeted in these ICE raids because of the color of their skin, because of the language they are caught speaking, because of the music that they are caught listening to. Let me tell you that I was born and raised in the Rio Grande Valley. We are proud there of our Hispanic heritage, and we are deeply patriotic and equally proud of being Americans. So when we are targeted by the government as not being American enough, it is deeply hurtful. We are just as American, just as Texan as anybody, and we deserve.
Welcome back here to Studio 9. You were just hearing from a number of leaders down there in Dilley, Texas at the Dilley Detention Center, where 5-year-old Liam Ramos is being held. Liam Ramos, of course, from Minnesota, was detained by ICE and sent down to Texas, where he still is. You heard from Representative Jasmine Crockett of Texas, Representative Greg Casar of Texas as well. This person that's speaking here, she is a state representative running for the governor of Texas as well in their next election. All right. A lot of hard news, a lot of heartbreaking news that we've been covering today. We want to try to lighten the mood just a little bit here. We're going to be bringing in my friend, Don Mitchell, Fox 9 sports reporter and anchor, just to talk a little sports here. Bill Belichick, he's in the news. He got snubbed for the Hall of Fame. A little Super Bowl 60 preview between the Seahawks and the Patriots. Vikings fans, are you rooting for Sam Darnold in the Super Bowl? We're going to ask Don that. And then the Timberwolves back in action tonight in Dallas. The Timberwolves have lost 5 of their last 6 games, looking to build up on some momentum of beating the Warriors just this past Monday night. All right, Don Mitchell coming up right after the break. Don't go anywhere. I've got a friend here in Studio 9. We're trying to lighten up the mood just a little bit. You probably know her from the Fox 9 News. This is Fox 9 sports reporter Delta Dawn Mitchell. Delta Dawn, just like Tanya Tucker, right, Delta Dawn?
You're going way back for that, aren't you? My friends just call me Delta. Not anymore.
Yeah. For those of you at home that don't know, this is a very popular country song in the 70s or the 80s, I think?
I have no idea. My dad used to listen to it. Yeah. And then someone else said, what's that? Dawn, go away, I'm no good for you. Yeah, that whoever, it was at the Four Seasons.
Oh, that might be before my time.
Yeah, never a good song about Dawn.
I thought the Four Seasons.
Get on that.
I thought that was just a hotel chain. I didn't realize that was a legitimate thing.
Yeah, maybe it's the Four Tops. I don't know.
The Four Tops, that's Motown. I like that. I like that.
It's a song. It's a song.
We're going through all these different cities. We're talking country music. We're talking Four Tops, Motown. Let's talk about your city. You're from Massachusetts, the Boston area, right?
Mm-hmm,
You grew up a Red Sox fan. We've gone over that.
Yeah.
You also grew up a Patriots fan. So this is a good time for you, right? You're in the Super Bowl.
Yes. They did not win till I left town, though, but that's okay. I mean, this is why I understand Vikings fans so much. I understand you because when I was growing up, nobody won anything. I think the only team that won anything when I was younger was the Boston Celtics. That's the only thing I ever saw as a kid winning was the Celtics. And then after I graduated college and then I started doing my tour for my career, then everyone started winning. So I got to look out from the outside back into my home. My brothers all loved it. But so if you remember Torrey Hunter, and then I was in Chicago for a while, and literally right after I left Chicago, the White Sox won the World Series and the Blackhawks won, and so I was thinking I was the jinx. And so Torrey started saying, "When are you leaving?
Yeah.
When are you leaving?" So it's hey, the women win when I'm here. It's just the professional men don't win when I'm here.
I don't know if you're going to catch a lot of sympathy for Minnesota sports because the Celtics won a lot in the 80s. I mean, they won a lot. They won at least, 2 times? I mean, I know the Lakers were in their way a little bit, but they won a couple times. The Pistons were in their way a couple times too, but they won.
But, I just remember like the big three, and then the big three all retired, and then there was a drought.
Yeah.
There was no football.
Yeah.
There was no fun football while I was living there. So, But now I know they're back in the Super Bowl, and so for me, it's been fun to watch. But the one thing, I know you said that we're lightening the mood. I'm not happy with the mood because Bill Belichick is not a first ballot Hall of Famer. I'm not happy about that. I think the petty party kind of took over and poisoned the water. And but now what Polian says, like, no, I was 100% sure I voted for him. And then he's like, well, I can't remember if I voted for him or not. So I think everyone should be able to show their vote.
Yes. Yeah.
And snuff out the petty. So I've been enjoying online, like Jimmy Johnson, LeBron James, J.J. Watt, all these people are saying, is this a joke? Am I believing what I'm seeing? So, Spygate, say what you will. Every team in the NFL does something. They were just dumb enough to get caught. So if he was dumb and you want to punish him for a little bit, take away one of the rings, he still has more than those guys.
That's right.
So I don't know.
There have been.
That's my rant.
Yes, yeah.
That's my Bill Belichick rant.
And it's great to see the Patriots even in the news, not even for being in the Super Bowl, but for their former coach, Bill Belichick, obviously. 5 first ballot Hall of Fame coaches in history. George Halas, Curly Lambeau, Tom Landry, Chuck Noll, Don Shula. Belichick has more Super Bowls than all of them, except for Lambeau. Lambeau also had 6. So he's tied with Curly Lambeau for the most. He's got more Super Bowl appearances than any of them.
He's got 8 Super Bowl rings. He was there twice as an assistant.
That's right, with the Giants. With the Giants, that's right.
If you get, 2 more, he's both hands.
Yeah.
Showing hands.
Why do you think, you mentioned Spygate, is it just, do you think this
Spygate and Deflategate.
Deflategate, do you think the North Carolina thing kind of to rub some people the wrong way with the
No, they don't care about that. They care about the Spygate and the Deflategate and say that he should not go in his first year as a penance. Like, come on. That's just, so that's how we're doing things now. That's okay.
Do you think, the Spygate, Deflategate, these are huge controversies in the NFL when they happened. Do you think that those really should factor into this stuff? He clearly is a Hall of Fame guy, and he's going to get in eventually. Why is this sort of, like you said, it's just like kind of penance for him?
Yeah, I think they're being petty, the voters, and I just don't think it's right. This guy's resume and winning, he deserves to be in the Hall. So, so he can't get in this year because he's not voted in.
Yeah.
I wonder if they'll do that to Tom Brady when he's eligible in 2028. So is this the precedent that you're setting. I personally just, and as a person born and raised, growing up in New England, I think it's pathetic. As a professional, I still think that it's wrong.
Yeah.
that he's not going in the first ballot, but he'll get in there.
He will. He will. And Tom Brady was one of the people that was kind of echoing sort of the sentiments of like, what are we doing here? Like, if Bill Belichick's on a first ballot.
Oh, is that what he said? I didn't check out what Brady said today. Yeah. This is just me being mad.
Yeah. Well, continue to be mad, but Patriots fans can't be so mad. I mean, their team is in the Super Bowl. They're a 4.5
Oh, you haven't met a true New Englander outside of me? Yes, we can be so mad.
Why? Like, hey, your team's back in the Super Bowl. I think I read a stat. I just on Twitter or something. It's been like 600 days since a Boston sports team hasn't won a title.
Mm-hmm.
You know how many I don't know how many thousands of days it's been in Minnesota since one of the Big Four teams has won a title. I mean, Boston is a very spoiled city here. I mean, you got to just be happy that you got your football team back in the mix, right?
Yeah, it's also a very difficult city when you don't win. Mm. So, it's 600 days or however many that you said. There was still a time when Drake May was a rookie and getting those lumps and bumps and learning how to do it, right? And if you want to equate it to the Vikings and J.J. McCarthy, he didn't get that chance because his whole first year he was hurt with his knee and rehabbing and came back. And we know what happened this year. But that's what great franchises do. So, all right, you might be out for a little bit, but then you build yourself back up. Trust me. You only think of it 600 days. It was, it was tough, but people weren't on the, Drake May is out. They're like, oh, this is what it feels like again.
That's right.
You think about the generations of people in New England, it's been a while before they felt that. Like, I'm like, yeah, I remember this.
Yeah.
Remember when we had Drew Bledsoe?
Yes.
So I think when I was real little, when I first started watching with my dad, it was Tony Eason. Yeah. Right? So, if you go way back, but that's coaching, that's talent, that's knowing how to kind of groom what your team needs. Yeah. So, it's going to be fun for me on Sunday, like professionally and, Super Bowl Sunday, professionally and personally, because I know guys on both sides of the ball now.
That's right. I want to get into some of those guys on both sides of the ball.
I want to get into something really quick.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't pipe in for sports stuff very often, but since we've got Dawn, I want to ask. Dawn, what's your ideal Super Bowl? Like, how do you celebrate that day? Like, what would it look like?
Oh, well, that's fantastic. First of all, being off. Yeah. Like if I'm not in my professional hat, right?
We don't want to
my personal hat.
Yeah, personal.
Not hat, because I have thankfully luxury of covering 5 Super Bowls and one with my Patriots. I would love to cover. I would love to work and cover the Vikings in a Super Bowl. So I'll put that right out there. That's
Next
like
year.
my professional Super Bowl, but personal, it might be like this year. I'm hoping to celebrate it in sunshine and sand and finally take a vacation after the season and holidays, take a vacation and be able to watch it with an umbrella drink.
Yeah.
And have a good game. I don't like blowouts.
Yeah.
I do not like blowout Super Bowls at all. I hate it when that's. I want it to be a good game. And to be honest, I've been talking. I'm going to be with friends that are from New England. Yeah. So I want the Patriots to win, but I also really want to see Sam Darnold win. Like there's a part of me inside that's kind of like, but that would be great.
Like a mini Vikings win.
Do you think
is that too soon?
Personal, I just, when you get to a certain point, like I do in my career, where you know these guys and you kind of root for the guys, you root for the men.
Yeah.
And what he has come back from, being that top like rookie and then the crashing and burning and basically being thrown out for the trash, being brought back in. And then the team that you are brought back in by says, we love you, but we'll let you test the waters. And then he goes to Seattle. So good for him.
Do you think Vikings fans are really rooting for Sam Darnold and rooting for the Seahawks in the Super Bowl? Because it's got to.
I think the majority are. I think the majority of people are sick of New England to begin with. I think like the Patriots are kind of like the Yankees of baseball now, because people. They let someone else have it, that kind of thing. So yes, but I also think Vikings fans that saw how Sam turned that team around and what he did and how he worked and how he not only got his own personal game back, he got the team back to winning. But it's the roll of the dice when it comes to the GMs and the people that pay the bills. Was this a fluke? It's almost like Case Keenum when he came in. Like, can we recreate that magic? And you also have to have an eye on the future. So it's a gamble. and it was a gamble that they didn't win.
Yes.
It was a gamble that they didn't win.
Yes, it was a good gamble for Seahawks GM John Schneider, St. Paul native, University of St. Thomas alumnus. So if you're at home and you're in Minnesota trying to find a team to root for, and maybe you're still a little bitter at the Vikings for getting rid of Sam Darnold, just be happy you got a St. Thomas guy and a St. Paul guy at the helm of the Seahawks who brought Sam in, believed in him. Now he's going to be starting a Super Bowl. The first ever USC quarterback to start a Super Bowl. I couldn't believe that stat.
Today.
It's a crazy stat. You think about all the greats from SC. So
so I am my mother's daughter in the fact that my mom always loved the underdogs, right? So Sam Darnold is an underdog. I also think Cooper Kupp, even though he's won a Super Bowl, so hear me out.
Super Bowl MVP, I think.
And
yes.
they basically, again, the Rams had to say, they're like, retire. So he's basically thrown out with the trash.
Yep.
And then he comes back. So I love that kind of story. But also on the other side, I may be in the minority because I know, but I loved covering Stephon Diggs. I had a very good working relationship with him when he was here. I know that he has his issues off the field, but as a person that I knew every day and how he treated me personally, I just adored the kid. So to see him get to his first, and people forget about Garrett Bradbury, 6 years with the Vikings. I saw him when he was a rookie all the way up to when he had to leave. He went through back injuries, and I've broken my back twice. So he and I would talk about back injuries. Like we'd be throwing out numbers, like C5, L3, like how's your this doing today? So just to see these guys. So for me, it's going to be like weird inside. I always have that mix of personal and professional of knowing the guys as people, being from New England, knowing what, the Vikings. So for me, it's really weird to be in my head and my heart sometimes for some sporting events.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting.
So cool that you've got so many personal connections in the Super Bowl. I know we don't have time, but you do have personal connections in the NBA as well with the Warriors. You just got to saw your nephew play against the Timberwolves.
My nephew, Pat Spencer.
Yeah.
He plays. He's 61 with the mustache, and also Cam Spencer, who plays with the Grizzlies. So, so it was great to see him. They took the split, so.
That's right. That's right. And the Timberwolves back in action tonight in Dallas. Losers of 5 of their last 6, hoping to get back in those winning ways.
But they're coming off that win.
They are coming off that win,
and
they
much
have
needed.
And
Thursday for the city and for here.
For the city and for here, absolutely. And then tomorrow night against the Thunder, huge game for the Timberwolves. Let's get to break. We're going to come back. We're going to wrap up today's show. Thank you so much. Welcome back here. We have just about 2 minutes left with you before we throw you to the Fox 9 News at 5 o'clock with Kelsey and Simone. But we do want to do a little whip around coverage. It's still a very busy news late afternoon and evening here in Minnesota and across the United States. Paul, I think we're going to send it to, this is Washington, D.C., I believe, where there is an anti-ICE rally, an Alex Preddy vigil happening right now as we speak. Those are live pictures coming in from Washington, D.C. And then let's also throw it now to the Carmel Mall in South Minneapolis, where Representative Ilhan Omar, she just had a bit of a liquid substance that was sent at her during a town hall that she was holding yesterday. And Representative Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts, they are holding a press conference in about any minute now at Carmel Mall. That you see them getting set up. That's in South Minneapolis. Carmel Mall is a hub holding over 100 small businesses and community organizations that's been hit especially hard by Operation Metro Surge. Again, Representative Ilhan Omar and Representative Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts will be speaking there really at any minute now, Paul.
And expecting a lot of eyeballs on that after the events of last night. Ilhan Omar being unknown liquid. In fact, maybe that's been released as to what the liquid is since we've been on air. I actually should have looked that up beforehand, but I imagine there's going to be a lot of interest in just kind of seeing kind of what's going to play out there tonight and what she's going to have to say after everything that went down last night. But that will be all covered in the 5 o'clock news, which if I play my cards right here, I can bring that up. There we go. Yes, that'll all be covered in the 5 o'clock news. We've got Kelsey Carlson and Simone Woolridge at the desk tonight. Get you covered in that 5 o'clock news. Less than 30 seconds to our throw to them. So Adam, I'm going to toss it back to the studio.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate the efforts of you and Grace back there. And for all of you at home that are watching, we really do appreciate it. It's been really tough these last few days, a lot of negative news. Hopefully, we're